What is up, guys? Welcome to another Final Fantasy video, and another video about another one of the more controversial games in the series, Final Fantasy III. After some of the things the second game tried didn't work out so well, Square went back to their roots with the third game. There isn't as much focus on story, the characters are basically self-inserts again, but they also added a new feature that allows you to switch jobs at any time. Although, we didn't officially get Final Fantasy III in English in its original form until 2021 with the Pixel Remaster. Yeah, all the 2D mainline Final Fantasy games were remastered for the PS1 and later Game Boy Advance, and then for mobile phones, except for Final Fantasy III. But in 2006, we did get a 3D remake that made a lot of changes. The characters are actually characters now, with names and designs. They're not self-inserts anymore. More story was added, and the fan base is pretty divided on which version of this game is better, and I had to make a tough decision on which version to make a video of. Ultimately, I decided to go with the 3D remake, but that doesn't mean I'll never do a video on the Pixel Remaster. So if you have any ideas, I'd love to hear them down in the comments. As for what to do now for 3, I decided to try to beat the game with an entire party of only Freelancers, the default job, which is really only a placeholder class for the early game. Once you gain the ability to switch jobs, there's really no reason ever to go back to it, so it's perfect for a challenge. And I'm also excited to do this because I've never actually played this version before. I've only played the Pixel Remaster, so let's get into it. Can you beat Final Fantasy III with only Freelancers? The game begins with the main character being dropped into some mysterious cave, and it's just the main character. None of the other party members are here. They won't be joining us until a little bit later, and when given the option to name him, well, I name him after myself as I usually do. There's an easy tutorial battle, and after exploring the cave a little, we come face to face with the land turtle, the first major boss. Yeah, not even 10 minutes in, and we're already fighting the first of this game's 4 crystal bosses. At least that means there's no challenge to it. It's basically the big boss equivalent of the first rival battle from Pokemon Red and Blue. You and the enemy just swing at each other until one of you dies, and we're both doing ship damage to one another. I was kind of hoping to avoid having to use a potion, but my HP gets low enough that I need to. And then the turn after that, I land the killing blow, so that's great. The crystal tells us that darkness is threatening to engulf the world. Big surprise, and we should seek out some others to help restore the crystals, and we meet one of them in the first town. His canon name is Ark, and I'm not really sure what to nickname him. My first idea was to do a solo run of the Pixel Remaster, but now since I'm playing with all 4 characters and not doing a solo run, I guess I'm just going to name them all after myself. So Ark is going to be me number 2. He doesn't join right away, though. That doesn't happen until we reach the next town where everyone has been turned into a ghost, and we can't buy anything because of it. Sid's ghost, however, tells us where his airship is, and he lets us borrow it? Wow, first we fought a major boss in under 10 minutes, and now we're not even 30 minutes in, and we already have an airship. But we're pretty limited on where we can fly this thing, because unlike in the first 2 games, this thing can't fly over mountains. We also find another party member, Refia, who is also the only girl in our party. Good thing too, because now I have an excuse to use the name Nyarla again. Since we can't go anywhere else, we just go to the castle that is suspiciously empty, and the few people that are here are also ghosts. This is because of the Djinn, so I guess we gotta go kill him. And then our 4th and final party member, Ignis, joins. We fly our airship across the lake to the cave, and in here we meet the princess, who has what's needed to defeat the Djinn, and not too deep in, we find him. The Djinn is kind of a hard boss, but he is much harder here than he was in the original game for one reason. He can attack twice. In fact, that's actually pretty standard for bosses in this game. They can attack you twice per turn, which I actually like. It means that bosses are less likely to waste entire turns with attacks that are weak or that your party is immune to. Every character except Ark is dual-wielding strong weapons, and Ark is standing in the back row with a bow. Him being in the back row means he's not taking as much damage, only around 30 from each of the Jin's physical attacks, while the others are taking around 60, which is like 2/3 of everyone's health. And he has 2 attacks, so that's not good. This is one of the rare cases where, for me, it's actually better for him to use magic, especially with its multi-target function, because with that, it only does like 20 damage. My sword users are doing around 25 to 60 damage with each of their attacks, and Ark's only one attack does 46 damage. That's his only attack because he just spends the rest of the battle healing. I have to make sure to keep everyone's HP above 60 at all times, but thankfully I don't have to do this for very long because this boss doesn't have a lot of HP and gets taken out on only the 5th turn. Now, I do think it's worth noting that, unlike in the original game, we haven't gained the ability to switch jobs yet. This game expects everyone to be a freelancer for this whole first part, so we're not faced with any disadvantages just yet. We found a lot of good equipment, and as freelancers, we're able to use almost everything we found. Even the spells we found we can use. As freelancers, we have access to level 1 white and black magic, so this run is probably going to be better than an Onion Knight only run would have been in the Pixel Remaster, at least for now. In the original and Pixel Remaster, the Onion Knight stats increase exponentially when they get to level 90, and they also have some very powerful equipment that only they can use. That is not true for the Freelancer. The Onion Knight class does exist in this version, and it's basically the Freelancer class on steroids, but because it's technically a different class, that means we can't use it. It's going to be Freelancers the entire game. Anyway, after defeating the Jin, we're transported to the Crystal Room from the very beginning of the game, and we're introduced to this game's job system. So, any mercy the game was having on us is about to stop. We just sleep through the job switching tutorial and then head on out. We go back to the castle where we can see that everything is back to normal. The king rewards us with a canoe because we did park our airship on the other side of the lake before being teleported out. We go back to Kazoos, and since everything is back to normal here too, we can get geared up, and even teach everyone some spells. Also here, Sid joins us. We upgrade his ship with a ram so that we can bust the giant boulder to get outside this valley, and it works. But it also breaks the ship. But at least we can drop Sid off at his hometown. Once again, we make sure to get all the hidden treasures from here, and also some information about some guy named Desh, who has gone missing. We go to the Dragon's Peak to look for him, and we're captured by the giant dragon to be worms for its babies. And here we meet Desh. We get a boss fight that we're supposed to run away from, and after that we find ourselves in a small predicament. In order to move on, we need to move through the gnome village, but we can't go there unless everyone is in mini form. And mini is a level 2 spell, meaning we can't use it as freelancers. I know most people probably won't have a problem with this, but I am sort of a purist when it comes to these sorts of things. But I could not find a workaround. The only other way to get in and out of mini form is by using a mallet, and aside from the single mallet that we found in a treasure chest, there is no way to acquire mallets this early in the game. I have no choice but to have one of my characters switch to a class that can use level 2 white magic, and that character is going to be Refia, because she's the girl. She's going to be the white mage. I think, is the white mage from the first game a girl? I don't know. I mean, in the PSP version it looks like a girl, but in the original and the Pixel Remaster it looks a little more masculine. And then in the GBA version it looks ambiguous enough that I guess it could be either. But then again, the promoted version of the class is called White Wizard, not a White Witch. Or, I don't know, maybe they did that because they were afraid of getting sued by the C.S. Lewis Foundation. This isn't even relevant to this game. Why am I wasting so much time talking about it? Anyway, after turning the whole party mini, I immediately change Refia back into a freelancer. Then head on through the village and into the Viking hideout. And if you're wondering why I haven't turned my party back to normal yet, that's because we're going to need to be mini to enter the next dungeon, the Nepto Temple, and this dungeon has to be done entirely in mini form. When in mini form, our physical attack and defense stats are reduced to 1, and all incoming damage is doubled. Fortunately, this dungeon is designed around that, and the random encounters aren't too hard, although we're almost out of MP by the time we make it to the boss. Yeah, there's a boss in here, that has to be fought in mini form. Fortunately, this thing isn't too difficult. Despite the fact that this boss gets 2 attacks, knows some magic moves, and has a normal attack that can cause poison, it doesn't have a lot of HP, and the fight doesn't last long enough for that to be a problem. It attacks Ark twice on the first turn and poisons him, then attacks Ignis with fire and a normal attack on the second, and also poisons him. It doesn't take either of them out though. Our level 1 attacks are doing like 70 to 100 damage with each hit, and on the third turn, Des chips in with his Thundara for almost 150 damage. Yeah, in this version, temporary party members can actually help out by chipping in every few turns. After that, I have Lunith use an Arctic Wind for over 200 damage, and that finishes it off. We take the Nepto Eye, give it back to the statue at the front of the temple, and now we have access to the boat. This makes it possible to go almost anywhere in the world, with a few exceptions. But the first thing we do is check out every town we can, every hidden passage we can, and get all the best equipment and items. In Castle Argus, there are 2 locked doors that we need to open with a magic key, although there is another way. You know, we already allowed a temporary change of classes to turn mini. I don't think there's any issue with us temporarily changing into the Thief class for some free loot. And speaking of temporarily switching classes, we need to do this again because in order to get into the Tower of Owen, we need to be in Toad form. We get the spell from some sage in a cave, then change Refia into a white mage again so that she can turn all of us into toads, and when in Toad form, our attacks are weakened, and we also can't use magic. All we can do is run away, but at least after making it through the part that we need to, we can immediately change back and do the rest of the dungeon in our normal human forms. After breezing our way through the rest of the tower, we make it to the boss, Medusa. And this is where things start to get a little difficult. Once again, she has 2 attacks, and she knows all tier 2 elemental magic attacks, and has a decently strong physical attack, and Stare, which causes Petrify, and she actually manages to hit it a few times. The best thing to do here is just have everyone spam Blizzard, and that's doing anywhere from 1 to 200 damage depending on who's using it, while stopping to heal with Cure or to use a gold needle to heal the party when necessary. Although, we're starting to reach a point where Cure isn't really healing enough. She's doing like a little over 100 damage with her normal attacks, but her magic attacks are doing almost enough to one-shot my party members when only targeting one of them, and Cure is healing just under 200. She's also considerably tankier than the last boss. She has 3000 HP, which is over 3 times as much as the giant rat, so it does take a little longer, but we are able to make it through this battle without losing a single party member. After the battle, Dest remembers who he is, the Guardian of the Tower. He sacrifices himself to fix the tower, and now the Maelstrom that was blocking the outer part of the world is gone, which opens up even more towns to check out. But the place we need to go to is the Dwarven Hollows, and in the dungeon here, we need to apprehend Gutsko the Rogue, who stole the Dwarves' Horn of Ice. After getting geared up, we go through the dungeon and confront him, and he's pretty easy. As per usual, I start by having all my party members swing at him with their normal attacks. Lunith is doing the most damage, usually around 100 to 150, while Ark is doing 70 to 100-ish, and the others are doing around 70 to 120. The boss's attacks are actually doing a bit less than Medusa's, but he also knows many, and almost takes out Refia one turn by using it on her, and then attacking her for over 200 damage. Thankfully, I have plenty of mallets, and I use one to cure her of it on the next turn, but the turn after that, he uses it on the entire party, and it affects Lunith, and he almost takes him out too. When I realize that he has mini and it has a good chance to hit my party, I start using magic attacks instead, and these are doing a little under 200 damage. So I just start having everyone spam those, although I do need to use at least one ally to heal every turn, but Lunith and Ark are my only healers, which I should probably fix. especially because Final Fantasy III doesn't use a traditional MP system. Instead, you have a limited number of uses for all spells of a certain level, although it is still called MP here. Luneth does run out of MP during this battle, but fortunately, shortly after that, the battle is over with us having defeated the boss. So we got back the Horn of Ice, but before giving it back to the dwarves, I make a quick trip to Canaan to buy 2 more Cure spells to teach Refia and Ignis so that everyone in the party now knows Cure. And then we go back to return the horn, only to get ambushed by Gutsko, who steals both the horns and runs off into the Molten Cave, which just so happens to be where the next giant crystal is located. We get to it, and Gutsko is here waiting for us, and we fight him again, this time in the form of the Salamander. This is not a particularly hard boss. In fact, I would say it's actually easier than Gutsko in his original form. Arc, Refia, and Ignis are all doing about the same amount of damage to him that they were to his original form, but Luneth is doing almost triple that because he's equipped with the Freezing Blade, which is found in the Molten Cave and it deals ice elemental damage. And for some reason, it takes me a whole turn to realize that since everyone else knows Blizzard, I should just have them all spam that instead. But the difference isn't as much as I was hoping. It's only doing about 20 to 30 more damage, although I do have an Arctic Wind, and when Arc uses it, it does over 1400 damage. Now, this thing's attacks are doing about the same amount that Gutsko's were, but it also has 2 magic attacks. His main attack is Fire Breath, which does about 150 to the entire party, which is a lot, but it's nothing that 3 party members can't heal off with multi-target cures. Now, having all 3 party members use Cure in one turn does sound like a setback, but as long as Luneth is free to keep attacking, there's nothing to worry about. Also, apparently he has another attack called Flame, but I can't tell you what that does because before he can use it, the battle is over. So we restore the Fire Crystal, unlock some new jobs that we won't be using, and take the horns back to the dwarves. And they give us a whole lot of treasure. And then we head down to Tokul, where we're captured and then taken to some jail in Haines Castle with everyone else that was supposed to be in Castle Arcus. We sneak out using Mini, and then the boss at the end is Matador from SMT. No, really, look at him. He even references SMT Nocturne. Yeah, I know this is a remake of a game that came out more than a decade before Nocturne. Shut up. Okay, this boss is actually Hain. I mean, he's the leader of the castle, so that's kinda to be expected. But he's actually one of this game's easier bosses. His main gimmick is that his affinities change. His weakness is always either electricity, ice, or fire, and he resists everything that he's not weak against, including physical. There's no way to figure out what his weakness is, all we can do is guess, and whenever he uses Barrier Shift, his weakness changes. His normal attack is pretty strong, sometimes doing over 200 damage, but besides that and Blizzara, his only attacks are ailment attacks, and he goes for these nearly every turn. He also goes for Barrier Shift a lot early on in the fight, but after that, I guess he just gives up. And for most of the fight, including after he stops using Barrier Shift, his weakness is Ice, which is perfect since Luneth still has the Freezing Blade equipped. My party members' Blizzards are doing around 200 damage when he's weak against Ice, and Luneth's attacks are doing over 300. I also managed to pick up a few Arctic Winds on the way here, and those are doing around 600 damage when he's weak against Ice. Toward the end of the fight, I just start spamming Arctic Winds, and I end up using up nearly all of them. Luneth uses the last one for over 800 damage, and that finishes him off. Well, that was an interesting diversion. We go back to Castle Argus, which is populated again, and the king gives us the Wheel of Time, which we use to upgrade our ship into an airship, and with it, we can fly outside the boundaries of the Earth into space, because the Earth is flat. Well, not really. The world we've been playing on is just a floating continent that's part of a much bigger world. I'm not sure what we're supposed to do in this vast new Windows Media Player generated ocean, but I guess we can check out this abandoned ship. Well, there's some sleeping girl here. After using an antidote on her, she wakes up and asks to be taken to the Temple of Water so that she can restore the crystal. So we bring her there, she gets the crystal, and then we take her to the Cave of Tides where the rest of the crystal is. But she gets ambushed by the Kraken. Alright, so now we're fighting the Kraken. Against this thing, the party is able to do 200 to 300 damage with normal attacks. But Lunith is able to do over 600 since he has the best weapons we can get right now. This thing's attacks are doing also around 200 to 300, but it rarely ever attacks twice in one turn. Most of the time, the second turn is spent using Blind, which does have a high hit rate, but it's probably the least problematic ailment to get afflicted with in the entire game, so I don't even waste turns trying to cure it. Once most of my party is blinded, I start having them use Zeus's Wraths, since I have a few of those, and those are doing around 600 damage with each hit. Close to the end of the fight, Ignis gets taken out. I try to revive him with a Phoenix down, but he immediately gets taken out again. I revive him again, and I'm expecting him to get taken out again, but instead Lunith gets attacked, and he just barely hangs on. But after landing one more attack for just under 600 damage, the Kraken is defeated. Unfortunately, the girl does not survive her attack from the Kraken. Oh no, you were with us for maybe 15 minutes. So, the cave collapses, we're knocked out, and then we're taken to some village on one of this new world's many continents. We get a vision of some old lady telling us to seek out some guy named Dogga. But right now, we can't leave the continent because our ship has been chained to it. There's some business we have to take care of here before we can set sail again, but this town also marks a very crucial point in the game. From the shop here, we can buy the main gotch, which, with the exception of the royal sword and poison dagger that Lunith currently has equipped, the main gotch is the best weapon that will be usable by the Freelancer class up until right before the end of the game. Yeah, at the start of the game, the Freelancer had some decent versatility with weapons, and up until now, the game had been pretty reasonable with it letting us use swords and knives. But after this village, our ability to upgrade weapons is basically just cut off. Why? I have no idea. Although we can still keep upgrading our armor, for some reason, I really don't understand this game's logic with this. Anyway, we now have to go through the sewers where we meet some crazy old men that think they're us, but they're so in over their heads that we have to save them. We then get the Levygrass shoes, which let us walk across swampy areas, and we use these to get to the Goldor Manor, where the last crystal is. And that means we have to fight another boss, this one being Goldor. He's a big knight in gold armor. Big surprise. Anyway, this fight is just another deal similar to the last one. He has physical attacks that aren't that strong, he has some ailment moves, including Blind, and he has Thundara, and none of these attacks really pose much of a threat. As I mentioned before, Lunith has the best equipment, and is doing almost as much damage as the rest of the party combined with his physical attacks. I mean, everyone else is doing like 300 to 400-ish damage, while Lunith is usually doing over 1,000. And yeah, I mean, this boss is weak, he can't really do much, and doesn't really do much, and we just spend the entire fight swinging at him for a few turns while stopping to cure ailments every now and then, and after a short while, we're done. Although, Goldor doesn't take his defeat very well, so he shatters the crystal and runs off. And in classic video game fashion, he drops the key we need to unlock the ship. So we do that, check out some towns, and then when flying over this giant castle town, our airship gets shot down. Apparently there's some kind of civil war going on, and we gotta help the prince save his dad, or something. So we go into the castle, and we get invited to see the king, but not until the next day, so we have a slumber party. That's interrupted by the king, who we find out is possessed, and the guy possessing him idiotically reveals himself and has to be fought as a boss. Garuda, and oh man, talk about a difficulty spike. On the first attempt, we start by just swinging at him like we usually do, and our attacks are doing about a third of what they were to Goldor, but then he goes for his signature attack, Lightning, and Jesus Christ, 500 damage? And then he gets a second attack, so yeah, this is not going to be possible under these conditions. I mean, I don't know what conditions are going to make this possible. We're not that far behind his level, and while there is some equipment that could probably help, most of it is only purchasable at shops in towns outside of this area, and we can't go back because our ship kinda got blown up, and I don't have any recent saves before arriving here. So, what now? Well, I suppose I could fortify my defenses somewhat with the equipment I have. I'll need to have Ark, Refia, and Ignis all be healers and supporters, and Lunith will be the sole attacker. My supporters won't be attacking, so there's no reason for them to have weapons, so I just give them 2 shields, along with whatever other magic-resisting equipment I have. Also, in one of the towers, some of the enemies have a chance to drop turtle shells and raven's yawns. Turtle shells cast Protect on one ally, and in this game, Protect raises physical and magic defense, and the Raven's Yawn casts Eureka, which is a powerful wind elemental spell, and that's what Garuda is weak against. The chances of these dropping are pretty low though, and because I don't want to get too overleveled, I end up resetting quite a few times. But when the party is just over level 30, we have enough turtle shells for everyone, and 2 Raven's Yawns. Now we might actually stand a chance. So, we attempt to begin, and first turn of the fight, I have everyone use a turtle shell. Thankfully, everyone is able to do it before he gets a chance to move, and this does exactly what I was hoping it would do. It dramatically decreases the damage of his attacks. He uses his first lightning, and it does 350 to 500 damage to my party members, which is still a lot, but it's survivable. Everyone knows Cure, and a full party Cure heals everyone's HP by about 150. So, with 3 of my 4 allies using Cure, we can heal off almost any damage that he's able to do using Lightning, while still having 1 ally, that being Lunith, free to keep attacking most turns. Sometimes his attacks do a bit more than I'm able to heal off, and when that happens, I have to have everyone, including Lunith, use Cure, which is annoying, but it's better to be safe than sorry. As soon as I can, I use both of my Raven's Yawns, and they do around 3,000 damage each. That is a lot, almost 2/3 of his HP in fact, but we still have to survive long enough and deal enough damage to defeat him from here. And as we saw in our first attempt, physical attacks are not very effective against him. Lunith is doing around 300 to 500 damage with his attacks, which isn't as much as I would like, but I'll take it. Early on, I do get a bit unlucky and Ignis gets taken out after a physical attack following a lightning. I am able to revive him with a Phoenix down and get him back on his feet with a high potion and a couple of party-wide cures, although I don't have any more turtle shells, so now he's going to be taking the full force of Garuda's attacks and there's nothing I can do about that. That same turn, I have Lunith use a Bacchus' Cider on himself, which casts Haste, increasing his number of attacks, and with that, he's doing not much more. I have a close call shortly after that where some of my party members' HP falls into the yellow, so the next turn I have them use elixirs on themselves, while the other 2 allies heal themselves with high potions. After that, he continues to spam lightning, I continue healing, and I don't know if this is just me, but his attacks seem to be getting stronger. It eventually reaches a point where I have to use all 4 of my allies to heal every turn, and while it helps to keep me alive, I can't attack while doing this, and eventually, my allies are gonna run out of MP. I'd be able to do some damage if I could get a turn where he just doesn't go for lightning, but this does not happen. He goes for lightning, first chance he gets every turn. After going like, maybe a dozen or so turns with only 1 opening, I start to get impatient. I'm out of Raven's Yawns, but I do still have a few other magic items that I can use. I have Refia use an Arctic Wind, and it does over 700 damage to him. After another lightning, my party gets dangerously low on HP, but instead of trying to heal back up, I decide to go for broke and have multiple allies attack with magic items. Lunith and Ark both use magic items, and thankfully, they do enough to take him out. Fuck that boss. So the king dies, the prince takes over as king, and that's all well and good, but we're still without an airship. But thankfully, the scholars here get us a new one. the Nautilus, which is faster, and with it, we can go through the windy pathway leading to Dogga's Manor, and there, he upgrades it so that it can go underwater, and this opens up even more of the world. There are some new towns we can visit, though none of them really have much we can use, and there's also some new optional dungeons that have pretty good treasures. Most of them we also can't use. In one of these dungeons is Owen, an optional boss that I didn't think was going to be hard at first, but in my first attempt, he annihilates the party with his signature moves on Sunken that does over 1,000 damage. So I decide to put that off until later. The place that we need to go to is the Temple of Time to get Noah's loot, and we just go in and grab it. Yeah, no boss. I guess this dungeon made up for that with the difficulty of the random encounters. They are starting to get pretty tough. We use the loot to awaken Unne, that old lady from the vision, and she helps us enter the ancient ruins so that we can get the Invincible, the next and final airship. This thing is basically a town on wings. We can buy stuff here, heal ourselves, check our mail, stuff like that. We can also fly over small mountain ranges, opening up even more locations. Before moving on with the main quest though, we want to backtrack to the original floating island to do some side quests. There's a side quest in where we have to rescue some children from some bombs in the altar cave, and for doing this we unlock the Onion Knight class. But we didn't do this quest for that. We did this because this opens up another side quest, one where Princess Sarah has some pendant that she needs fixed, and it can only be fixed by this legendary blacksmith with a beautiful haircut. She fixes it and then tells us that if we find some orichalcum and bring it back to her, she'll make us a really powerful weapon. Where do we find orichalcum? In Cid's basement. Yeah, it's dropped by some monster that snuck into his basement, and that monster is fought as an optional boss. Kinda. Technically, it's not a boss, it's just an enemy with a lot of HP. And at first I was expecting an easy fight. I mean, Lunith is still doing over 1,000 damage with his attacks, and this guy only has like 10,000 HP. But he decimates my party with his earthquake attack that does almost enough damage to wipe out the entire party in one hit. The only way I'm going to be able to do this is by blasting away his HP with attack items before he can kill me. So I spend a bit of time in the overworld farming for attack items, although it's a bit harder now because the best places to do this were in the water around the Nepto Temple. But despite the Invincible being a boat, with objects on the side that clearly look like they're for flotation, this thing cannot actually sail on the water. In fact, after your second airship gets blown up, there's no way to sail at all. The game just thinks that travel over water is obsolete now. Oh, and despite getting the Invincible from underwater, it can't go underwater either. So every time we need to go back under the water, we need to fly back to the Nautilus and use that. But anyway, this item blast away strategy seems to work, and we're able to take him out before he takes out the party, with only Ark standing. We get the orichalcum, and then take it to the blacksmith, who is nowhere to be seen. Apparently, she doesn't actually appear until after you've entered Eureka, which is one of the last areas in the game, so I guess we'll just have to continue to scrape our way through the main quest. Our next destination is the Cave of Shadows, where we have to get the Fang of Earth, but not before fighting another boss, the Hecatonkir. He's basically the thing we fought in Cid's basement, but slightly weaker. He mostly uses physical attacks, but he does no Quake, which is strong, but it's nowhere near as strong as Aeon's Earthquake. I just handle this the same way I would any other boss, although at this point, my only physical attacker is Lunith. Everyone else is just being used for healing and magic attacking. I mean, their magic attacks are doing more than their physical attacks, so I just equip them with all the best defensive equipment I can give them, which means giving them 2 shields. No weapons. Lunith's attacks are still doing a little over 1,000 damage, while everyone else's magic attacks are doing around 700 to 800. Although during this fight, I do use a few magic attack items. This thing's normal attacks are doing around 500 damage, which is more than manageable, and his Quake attack is also doing the same amount to everyone. So, it's not great when he does that, but we can handle it, and he doesn't go for it very often, at least early on. He does start to use it more as his HP gets low, and I do have to spend a few turns getting back on my feet when the party's HP gets dangerously low, but almost immediately after that, we land the final attack, and he gets taken out. So we get the Fang of Earth, and now we gotta take it to Dogga's Manor, which we need to do in the Nautilus because the area leading up to the manor is a wind tunnel that the giant ship that's called the Invincible can't get through for some reason. And at the bottom, Dogga wants to test us, so we have to fight him. And yes, this mystical old man's true form is this thing. He has the 3 main elemental magic attacks of the highest tier, which he almost always targets the whole party with. And his normal attack is pretty strong too. All of these attacks do around 500 damage, but in the rare event that he uses his magic on a single target, that does well over 1,000 damage. And that's to say nothing of Flare, which does over 3,000. And there's nothing that can be done about that. That just deletes anyone that gets hit with it. It's a case where things start out okay, but the longer the fight goes on, the more worn down my party gets. We have to spend more turns healing, less turns attacking, and we just can't beat him before he beats us. Fortunately, I had a feeling this might happen, so before the fight, I did a bit of farming for magic items. The tier 2 spell ones are doing about 2,000 damage to him, while the stronger ones like the Chocobo's Wrath and White Musk are doing around 3,000. I'm able to get some good damage off really early on thanks to these items, but that doesn't stop him from taking out my party members. And once we're out of items, we can't do much besides use our own weak attacks, though there is another option. What I've gathered is that when his HP gets low and your party members start dying, he'll start going for Flare, which can only target one enemy at a time in this game. There is another magic item that I have called the Shining Curtain, which reflects one spell. So once it gets down to just 2 party members, I use that, hoping to reflect a Flare, but he goes for Drain instead, but it still takes him out. Thank God we were able to get past that. Now I can... Oh, never mind. I have to fight Unne now. And I'm not even healed. That's just great. Well, before I can even think about fighting this thing, I need to revive and heal my allies, which thankfully I'm able to do with a bunch of luck. Overall, I would say Unne is easier than Dogga. She doesn't have as much HP, she's more of a physical attacker. Her attacks are actually doing a bit less than Dogga's, and unlike Dogga, not all of her magic moves are attacks. She knows Haste and Protect, which can be a bit of a problem, but we do have a couple of Shell Breakers, which removes any buffs the enemy has set up. Now, even though she's not as strong as Dogga, she's still pretty strong, and we used up nearly all of our magic attack items in the fight against Dogga. Although, I do have a Turtle Shell, so I use that on Lunith to help keep him alive. He is our most important party member, with him being the main attacker and all. But overall, this is just a really long and tedious fight. My allies are constantly getting taken out, forcing me to revive them, and pretty much everyone besides Lunith needs to heal every turn. But at least Lunith is able to deal a solid 1,000 or so damage every turn, and in the rare instances where my other allies can attack, they're doing around 700 to 800. Although, it's during this fight I actually realized that I don't need to waste MP by having them use magic attacks, because the Salaman Sword and Freezing Blade can be used as items to cast Fire and Blizzard respectively. If you're wondering why I can't do that with the more powerful items, that's because in this game you need to be able to equip a weapon to use it as an item, so this is all I've got. Eventually, I do run out of Phoenix Downs, and things are starting to look pretty bleak, but by the time this happens, the fight has already gone on for quite a long time, and when I least expect it, I am able to land the final blow and finish her off. Thank Christ that's finally over. There's only one more boss we have to fight before getting access to Eureka, the Guardian of the Earth Crystal, the Titan. This boss is, it's just the Hecatonture. Same design, same move, same strategy. The only difference is the stats, so I just handle it the same way. But at this point, I've pretty much given up on any kind of physical offense, so everyone, including Lunith, now has 2 shields, and we're only attacking using magic from the swords. This thing is doing about 300 to 500 damage with its attacks, and its Quake attack is doing about the same amount to the party. There's not a lot to say, it's basically just a mixture of attacking and healing. Usually 2 of my allies will attack each turn, while 2 will heal, but sometimes I need to have 3 of them heal, and each of our attacks are doing about 700 to 800 damage. And it does take a while because this boss has quite a lot of HP. In fact, most turns after selecting my moves, I just turn on auto battle because that makes things go faster. There's not much to say, just a long, boring battle with the same moves being repeated almost every turn until he's dead. That was quite tedious, but things are about to get a lot better, because now that we've restored all the crystals, we can enter Eureka, the Forbidden Land, and then immediately head out, talk to the blacksmith again, give her the orichalcum, and she gives us the Ultima weapon, the best sword in the game, and one of 2 late game weapons that is usable by the Freelancer class. After like a quarter of the entire game, we are finally able to upgrade our weapons, and with this one, we can easily blow through any enemy or boss in just a few turns. We go back to the Saronia catacombs to fight Owen again, and Luneth's attacks are now doing upwards of 8,000 damage to him, and he goes down with almost no effort. It's the same deal for Bahamut, who is that dragon that kidnapped us earlier in the game, and the Leviathan, who can be fought in late Doher. All these bosses give you their summons for beating them, which we can't use, but at least the experience we got was pretty good. And this isn't even the only late game weapon we can use. In Eureka, there are several optional bosses that can also be fought for some very powerful items. And the only one we're interested in is the Excalibur, which is guarded by the General. He's pretty powerful and has some strong attacks like Bio, but with Luneth's ability to do over 6,000 damage per attack, it's not that difficult. And even with Luneth being the only attacker with everyone else being a healer, he goes down in just a few turns. Once the fight is over, we equip that weapon, and now Luneth is dual-wielding 2 of the best swords in the game, and the 6,000 to 8,000 we were doing before is now well over 10,000. Even though the maximum the game can display is 9,999, it is possible to do more than that. These 2 weapons combined are easily able to decimate the other bosses here, which, even though we can't use any other weapons here, these bosses are so easy there's no reason not to fight them. Oh yeah, there is also one other item to pick up, the Celestial Gloves, which is given by the legendary blacksmith as a reward for reaching level 99 with the Freelancer job, which we actually did quite a while ago. But with that, we now have everything we could possibly need, and are good to move on into the final dungeon. We make our way up the Crystal Tower, and at the top, we reach the mirror and are taken to the World of Darkness, and this is where we fight Zand, who, as I expected, is pathetically easy. As usual, Luneth is the main attacker, with his attacks doing well over 10,000. Everyone else just spends the fight using magic from the Salaman sword, even though it's probably not necessary, and probably doesn't make a difference, but it's easy either way. Even though this boss is able to do some good damage with his attacks, this fight is over in only 4 turns. So now we have to fight the Cloud of Darkness, and this is one of those scripted fights that we can't win. A few turns in, the party gets obliterated, but then we're brought back through the power of friendship, and now there are 4 more bosses we have to defeat before challenging this boss again. These can be done in any order, and the first one I decide to face is Cerberus, who is also the hardest. In fact, all of these bosses are a tremendous step up in difficulty from Zand or any of the other bosses we fought on the way here. All 4 of these Dark Guardian thingies have 100,000 HP. That's twice as much as Zand. And Cerberus not only hits much harder, but he has 3 attacks. Every turn is usually him normally attacking twice, most of the time for over 1,000 damage, and then going for a multi-target spell that deals around 500 damage. This would be manageable normally, but with 3 attacks? That's just too much. Even with the astronomically high damage that Luneth is able to do, we just can't defeat him before he's able to defeat us. The only strategy that does seem to work is going all out with offensive items. Thankfully, we have plenty of these. And it's a really good thing too, because once you're in the World of Darkness, you can't leave. I'm not exactly sure how much damage the party is doing every turn, but I'd imagine it's around 20,000 or so damage when the entire party is able to attack. Our items are doing 2,000 to 3,000-ish damage as expected, with Luneth doing more than 10,000. He also gets a couple of lucky critical hits during the fight, and after not too many turns, he goes down from an Arctic wind. Fortunately, it only gets easier from here. The next one we take on is the Twin Dragon, who doesn't have any attacks of his own, just his normal attack, and he does hit a bit harder, but he only has 2 attacks. Although, since this thing is dealing way more damage than we're able to heal off without items, and since we've already used up most of our magic attack items, I don't really have much use for my allies, so instead of having them cast Cure every turn, I just have them guard, and only heal occasionally. The idea is for them to serve as distractions that will take his attacks with reduced damage, while Lunith attacks, and hopefully is able to do enough damage to defeat the boss before anyone needs to heal. Lunith does get pretty low on HP once during this fight, so I have to use an elixir to heal him, but after that we just go back to what we were doing, and it only takes a couple more turns to finish him off. The next one is Ahriman, and he's much easier than the other two. He looks threatening on paper with him having 5 different magic attacks, including Meteor and Quake, not to mention he can heal himself with Kiraja, but his normal attack is also very weak, and Kiraja doesn't even heal him by half of what Lunith is able to do each turn, and a turn he spends using Kiraja is a turn that he doesn't attack. I go in using the same strategy I did in the fight against the Twin Dragon, and it seems to work. Although, I do have to heal a bit more often, and actually, toward the end, I just turn on auto battle with Lunith attacking and everyone else using Cure on the entire party, and with that going, it's only a few turns before the boss bites the dust. The last one is the Echidna, who is probably the easiest out of all of these bosses. Her normal attack is a bit stronger than Ahriman's, but 2 of her 4 moves are Death and Tornado, meaning they don't do anything since everyone is equipped with a ribbon, which is something I should have mentioned. 4 ribbons can be found in chests in this place. She knows Quake, but doesn't seem to go for it. Her favorite move seems to be Drain, which is pretty weak. She also seems to have the lowest defense out of all these bosses because taking her down requires fewer turns than it does the other bosses, and a lot less effort. So, we defeated all 4 Dark Guardian thingies. We awakened the 4 Warriors of Darkness, and with their help, we can now actually stand a chance against the Cloud of Darkness. So, here we go. Now, this boss isn't actually too much of a step up in difficulty from the last 4. She has 120,000 HP, which isn't that much more than they did, but she does have 2 snake tentacle things that act separately and have different functions. They both have 66,666 HP, and the one on the left is immune to magic and uses magic attacks, while the one on the right is immune to physical attacks and casts supportive spells on her, like Haste and Protect. We don't need to take out either of these things to defeat the boss, and good thing too, because one of them being fully immune to physical attacks would have made things a lot more complicated. It's probably not necessary for me to take out the leftmost one, but I don't want to risk this thing pulling out some crazy powerful attack at the last minute, so I'm going to take it out anyway. The first thing I do is set up my turtle shells on everyone. I was saving them for this fight, and then I use the Bacchus' Cider to cast Haste on Lunith. After that, it's just the same strategy as usual. Attack with Lunith while healing and guarding with everyone else. There's no way to know exactly how much damage Lunith's attacks are doing, but I'm going to guess maybe 15 to 20,000. I mean, it doesn't take me very long to take out the leftmost snake tentacle thing, and once it's out of the way, I shift focus to the main body, and the strategy continues to stay the same. Although, I do have my party members use some magic items on her every now and then. The Lilith's Kiss is especially helpful for allies when they get low on HP. The other snake did cast Protect on her, so I'm not sure how much that's reducing Lunith's attacks by, but at least I know they're dealing over 10,000. This thing has been doing around 700 to 1,000 damage with its normal attacks every turn. I imagine Haste has something to do with that. The snake thing casts that on her too. And it's not too bad, it's manageable, and this thing also has some other attacks like Bad Breath, which inflicts status ailments, meaning to us it does nothing, and It also has Particle Beam, the same skill that it used to obliterate our party in the unwinnable fight against it, but thankfully here it doesn't do anywhere near as much. After some time, Ignis goes down, but it's at a point where the fight has gone on long enough that we can't really stop to revive him. I continue to attack and heal, and shortly after that, Refia goes down too. I notice that she's going for Particle Beam a lot more, so she must be getting low on HP. I'm not sure if I'll be able to deal enough damage to her in time to take her out before I get taken out, but just when I least expect it, I attack with Lunith and she goes down. There we go. We defeated the Cloud of Darkness. We say our goodbyes, drop everyone off at their homes from the airship, and then the credits roll, showing us all the jobs that we didn't use. And there you have it, everyone. It is possible to beat Final Fantasy III with only Freelancers, provided you make the brief exception for the parts where you need to use Minnie and Toad on your party. But you're never required to go into battle as any other class. And with that, it is completely possible. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Final Fantasy III. I definitely understand why people have issues with this game, but I do think this is a good game, and this was a fun challenge to do. And with FF3 out of the way, FF4 is next, and I think that is one that most people can agree is a pretty good game. But anyways, guys, thank you all for watching. Be sure to check out my other links in the description. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe. And until the next video, I will see you all later.